Hello, goblins and ghouls, and welcome to my Haunted Life podcast. I'm your host, Angela Hartshorn, and today I'm taking y'all to Salem, Massachusetts, to one of my new favorite places in all of Witch City. Possibly the world. Honestly, it might be my new favorite place on the planet. The Salem Witch Board Museum. Welcome, my darklings. How are you all doing today? I hope you are amazing and everything is wonderful and you find something positive to put your energy into today. And Happy New Year! Holy crap! New Year! When that happened? I still feel like it's more like October, maybe November still. But not New Year, so if you're in that weird time rut like I am, just know you're not alone. But on a positive note, we are back. I am so excited to be here. I have so many stories that I've been sitting on and working on and just attempting to find the time. It was an extremely hard fall and winter there for me, as you probably guessed from the lack of episodes. Today's episode, I've been waiting to share since October. I wanted to get the It's Coming stuff up and going, and then sadly, there were some technical issues, and we actually lost the episode. And then just being so drained in October, like, I can't think of the word to even describe, like, the brain deadness at the moment. It was bad. I'm really proud of all the work I accomplished by myself with the occasional hand from the hubs this last year with the other business, Heart and Horn. But I realize I definitely need help with the way the business is growing. So, I've already have set up an assistant starting later this month, so that'll be awesome. And then I had this episode, ready to go. All ready. All I needed to do was add music and publish, and I figured I could do that during the layover in Kansas City, which was the last show of the year just before Thanksgiving. And I was like, oh, Thanksgiving episode. Fun. And then I left my laptop at home. I brought the charger, but not the laptop. So my brain was not there. And then as soon as I got back, I figured I would get it out still before Thanksgiving. And then went down with the worst case of COVID I've ever had. So that sucked as well. It was rough. And it took an insane amount of time to recover from. My lungs still aren't fully recovered. So we'll see how all this goes. Luckily, I'm not actually recording a full episode at the moment. Just really cool intro. And even now, my lungs hurt. So it's been a time, y'all. But anyways, this episode is definitely worth the wait. Let me tell you. On this week's episode, we are talking to John Kozik from the Salem Witch Board Museum, and we talked for almost an hour and a half, and I still don't think it was enough time. We talk about what got him into collecting, his favorite boards, and just some of his favorite stories. We have a John Waters connection. Like, this episode has everything, you guys. I literally could have talked to him all night. I didn't want to keep him. But, man. So, let's get into it, shall we? Grab yourself a cup of tea, make sure the doors are locked, and the planchette is close by. I have a story to tell you. I am on today with John Kozik from the Salem Witch Board Museum, which is now my like my favorite spot in Salem. It was so exciting. So thank you for being on in the middle of your crazy season.
Yeah, my pleasure. I always love talking about Ouija boards. And so thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm just going to jump right into it. What got you started in all of this?
I became interested in the Ouija board after I inherited my grandmother's Ouija. Hers looks like, I think, what most people might think of, with the couples using it in the corner and the sun and the moon. And so my grandmother used the Ouija alone. She would fly on the thing. She could yell out letters and numbers quicker than anyone could write it down. And when she passed away in the late 90s, I asked my family if I could have it. And once I got it, I went online to learn more about it. I thought pretty much all Ouija boards looked the same. And I was surprised to find out there was hundreds, if not thousands, of different boards and manufacturers. And that's what made me start collecting them. Became a very obsessed collector, bought every single one I could find. And then about 6 years into collecting, I met my friend Robert Merge, Calvin Von Crush, Rick Schreck, and there were other collectors. We formed a group called the Talking Board Historical Society. So I'm part of a registered nonprofit who research, preserve, celebrate the history of these boards. And then about 5 years ago, opened the Salem Witch Board Museum. 5 months ago, I opened a second location in Baltimore. And yeah, all I do every day is talk about Ouija boards. So very fascinated.
That is awesome. What do you think drew you to your grandmother's board?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I spied on her when she used it by herself and she flew on it. But at some point, she believed that the board was evil and had lied to her. And she put it in a black trash bag. She hid it under the couch. And, I grew up a little bit afraid of it at that time. But as I got older, super into Halloween and horror movies and things like that. And so when she passed, I thought, oh, wait, I want something. And if it is evil, I think it'd be pretty cool to own it. But, when I started going online and learning more about it and just how vast the history was to it, it just really, really inspired me to want to just keep learning and more. And I really like it that it's an item that most people wouldn't think twice about. But when you hear just a little bit of the history, I think you're pretty surprised that it can really connect to a lot of different things, not just, movies and music and plays and but it goes into politics, religion. I mean, it plays into a lot of different things. And I like that it can do all those things. So for me, the history is really something I'm most fascinated with. And, of course, the Ouija board has, kind of a scary background to it. It has, a lot of people use it, maybe don't have the best experience with it. So there's like that, spookiness part of it. And then certainly the campiness of it, of, remembering it from a slumber party and, just having fun, who pushed the planchette. So I kind of like all of that stuff to it.
Now, one of the things that probably one of the main reasons why, other than the history, that your museum is one of my favorite places now in Salem is my little brother, who's very skeptical. I don't know how he turned out the way he did with me and my mom. Like, my mom refused to go inside, and he was like really curious to like actually learn why I was really excited about these things. And it was his favorite place. Like, that ended up becoming his favorite part of the trip, was going to the museum, because he learned so much. He had no idea. He only knew horror movie references. So I have to ask, what is your favorite Ouija horror movie then, in that case?
Well, on the Witch Board Museum, no surprise, it's going to be the movie Witch Board. 1986, it really was the first movie that made the Ouija board the star of the film. Everything kind of happened around the Ouija board. I'm a child of that time frame. And so Tawny Katane, who's the star of it, she was pretty famous for rolling around on the hood of the car in the White Snake video. So her first starring role. And so that one, I like. It still holds up to me. I think it's, still scary, but obviously represents the 80s pretty well in a campy way as well. So the Witchboard's my favorite for sure.
I love that. Okay. I haven't seen that one in a very long time, and now I'm going to have to go find it and rewatch it.
It should be on Tubi, Prime, and Shudder. And Witchboard 2, I should say, is also a really good film. Witchboard 3, not so much. The first two, they're both good.
First two, highly recommended from the Witch Board Museum in Salem. Love it. You have such a freaking vast collection. It is amazing. What is your oldest board you think you have?
Yeah, the oldest board I have is from 1890, and it's really the first mass-produced board. So they're kind of coming about, just post-Civil War, evolving. And it's not until 1890 when a guy named Charles Kennard in Baltimore produces the first one. He calls it a witch board originally. A few months later is when a woman named Helen Peters asked it what it wanted to be called, and it spelled back Ouija. So the witch board that I have, pre-Ouija, is one of only 5 known to exist, and 1890.
Oh, that's so cool. I don't think I realized that it was like one of 5 to exist. I'm going to go through all my videos and pictures I took now because I took pictures of everything.
It's in the first case. It would be the one that's laying flat in the very first case in the center. And it's cool because it doesn't have a logo at the top. It actually says good night at the bottom as opposed to goodbye. And the moon, the crescent moon on the top right is kind of face straight down. So it's got a few different things going on for it. The material, it's like a nice solid piece of wood that's beveled edge. And so nice, really high quality. And so it's made with a stencil. So it kind of has sort of a very primitive, evil kind of look to it.
Love.
But yeah, so anything older than that board would be homemade.
Wow. Civil War. Okay. Because I know like turn the century more with fund and eventually, I can't think of the toy company. Thank you. That start like mass producing them more in like the 70s.
Yeah, Parker Brothers took over in 1966.
Okay.
They bought it. They bought the brand in 66, paid $1 million for it, which was the most paid for a game at that point. And then the following year, it outsold Monopoly. So the first and only game to ever do so. That sold 2 million copies just in 1967 alone.
Wow. That it's so fascinating to me. I love it. Because it shows that people are still interested in these things. One of the other questions from the podcast group was, what is your newest board? And I know this is a hard one because they're always coming out with new ones.
They are. I mean, in the last 6 months, there's been about 6 boards, everything from the TV show Wednesday to my friend Sam works for Trick or Treat Studios, and they made a Good Guys board based on Child's Play 2. And then you also had a new Exorcist board that came out that actually, based on the original 70s film.
Oh, wow.
And then there's a new Beetlejuice one from the new film. But the newest one I just got, it was a launch party that happened last week, is Winning Moves, the next town over from us in Danvers. They made a Salem edition Ouija board. And they did a really fantastic job with it. It's all the Salem landmarks from the witch house to House of Seven Gables. The artwork is on there, and it has like little stories about each one of those places. And we consulted with them, and I think they did a really fabulous job. It's nice quality, but that's the newest one. They just had the launch party last week.
That is so cool. Oh, that makes me really happy. I really want one now. I'll have to look that up. What do you think is your favorite? I don't know if that's like a hard question with so many you have.
It's Sophie's choice at some points, but clearly my favorite is my grandmother's board, which was the first. The one I kind of go to the most, it really speaks about the obsession that I have to collect them, is a board called the Electric Mystifying Oracle, and it's a metal board. It was made in the 1930s, and the planchette was metal, had ball bearing casters at the bottom, a battery, and a light bulb inside. And there are like little bumps on the board. When the planchette passed over the bump, it would make it light up. And 1933, a regular Ouija board sold for about $1.50. This metal one sold for almost $5. The company put all their capital into producing it. It was a flop. People loved it. But the Great Depression, no one wanted to spend the kind of money. So a couple of years later, when World War II came along, the company scrapped all of them for the war effort. And today, we know of 9 boards, 5 planchettes that still exist. So to me, it's a really rare oddball board, metal. But when it came up for sale, it was part of a whole collection, and the guy would not sell the one item. You had to buy the entire collection. Old time collector, having health issues.
Okay.
Within 2 hours, I secured funding. I rented a car. I picked up my best friend Merch in downtown Boston at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and we drove 21 hours straight down to Florida to be able to get it. And as we were driving, other collectors were trying to kind of screw me over on the deal, make their own deal. And I wasn't sure until we showed up that the guy would actually honor the deal. And of course, when Merch and I got there, I said, we're going to make sure this guy doesn't rip us off. Let's make sure he gives us everything he says he's going to get. It was a big collection. It was probably in the neighborhood of 300 boards. And I only really cared about this one. That's all I wanted. But I had to buy all of them to get the one. So when we got down there, the guy was very nice. He, gave me a bunch of planchettes, a bunch of extra boards, and I changed gears. I said, Merch, we're loading up and getting out of here before this guy changes his mind. Because Merch and I were trying not to freak out, but we were seeing things that, he's collected a lot longer than me, and things that we never knew even existed anymore. Boxes for Oriole boards from like 1907, like ephemera. And we loaded up and we were giddy. We couldn't believe we had all this stuff.
Yeah.
And as we were driving, we're dying laughing because we're like, and we had worked all day on a Friday and then drove 21 hours straight. So we hadn't slept, and we're laughing. We're like, we get in an accident right now. There's going to be Ouija boards all across the highway, and this will be the most investigated paranormal space in America.
Wow.
But yeah, that's the kind of obsession I have to collect these is, don't waste time. Get in the car, go pick it up. Don't wait for someone to change their mind. Don't wait for them to go up on the price. Don't wait for another collector to come along. If you find it, grab it as quickly as you can. And so I have a lot of those adventures behind me.
That's awesome. I know you had one with the footstone.
Yes.
On display in the cemetery or in the museum.
Yes.
I love that story. Would you be willing to tell it again?
Sure. So there's a footstone on display in the museum, and the footstone belongs to William Fuld, who's pretty synonymous to the Ouija board. Him and his family had made it for over 70 years. The classic story I like to tell about Fuld is he'd used the Ouija board, and it told him he should build a second factory in Baltimore. So he built a factory. He was supervising the installation from of a flagpole up on the roof, and he ended up falling off the roof, dying from his injuries. On his deathbed, he had told his family, don't sell Ouija boards. We weren't sure what he meant. Don't sell, the brand or the board itself. 39 years to the day, on the anniversary of his death, that's the day the family sold to Parker Brothers. So I have the pocket watch he was wearing when he died. That's on loan from Merch. That's on display there. And then the footstone. And when people ask about the footstone, I try to make it seem like maybe I did something illegal or something like that. But and the real story is that it sat as the family puts the footstone for the family plot. And over the years, it shifted pretty deep in the ground. And about 10 years ago, the family was going to bury someone else in the plot. The cemetery wasn't sure exactly where the free space was. They actually told the family they would charge them $10,000 to break it apart and dispose of it. Wow. The family luckily called Merch instead. And you want a footstone? Hell yeah. So hopped in a car, drove to Baltimore to get it. Called our friend Nathan in Baltimore, who was for asking him to help. He was very kind to offer that he would meet us at midnight to help get the footstone. We had to assure him that we weren't stealing it, that the family was giving it to us. But we showed up down there and didn't come prepared with tools or anything like that. So we kind of stared at it for a while until the groundskeeper came by, kind of an 80-year-old guy with a really small waist with a rope tying up his pants. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, we got to get this out of the ground and put in the vehicle. He came back with a tool jacked up by himself. And it's roughly 600 pounds.
Wow.
I mean, most people would look at it. It looks similar to like a parking curb.
Yeah, no, it's not little.
Small like that, but it's about 600 pounds. Pretty heavy.
Oof. Now, we grew up working in cemeteries with my mom being a reenactor and conservator and stuff. So when me and my skeptical brother saw that, we were like, I don't know. And then when you told the story, I was like, oh my God, I love this place so much.
Yeah, we have some history with cemeteries. That's a footstone there. And that woman, Helen, who I mentioned, named it. Sadly, we found out that her and her husband died very poor, and they're buried in a plot in Denver, Colorado.
Yes.
We knew where, but their names weren't added to the headstone. So the Talking Board Historical Society helped raise money to put a headstone in for her and her husband, and as well as the other 5 people there. Her brother-in-law, Elijah, who patented the Ouija, he was buried in an unmarked grave as well down in Baltimore, Greenmount Cemetery. And we raised money to put a headstone in for him. And if you look up Ouija headstone or anything like that, it looks just like the patent drawing. So it's a Ouija board on a headstone, but the TBHS was responsible for those as well. So had a little bit of a history dealing with graveyards at this point.
I love that. I have yet to go visit Helen, and it's very upsetting to me because I'm in Colorado. It's only like an hour. But I've seen the pictures. The pictures are absolutely gorgeous. You guys did such a good job.
It's a great cemetery too. Those people were really nice. They embraced the history. They added her to the Prominent Women of Denver tours, the October Ghost tours. So they helped to get her story out there. And the other place is the Molly Brown house in downtown Denver. Molly Brown, who's associated, the survivor of the Titanic. And when they found out that, the mother of the Ouija board was buried in Denver, they were so excited. They made their own signage on their own promoting it. And they've just been a really great ally and, friend to the TBHS. Last year, we lent them a bunch of boards to put on display at the Molly Brown house. And funny enough, to the right of that house, it's like a little cafe, a little like boarding house maybe, or I don't know, there's a house to the right of it. That is actually where Helen Peters lived. So she was neighbors to Molly Brown in Denver.
Oh, that's cool. I never knew that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Denver connection as well, and Molly Brown House, pretty cool place to visit.
Oh, that. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that connection. I thought I knew my good history. I was wrong. That's good. Wow. So all these connections to Baltimore, is that why you decided to do a second location there? And is there a chance for one in Denver with all these connections?
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest with you, after I opened up Salem, I really wanted to do something in Denver. And because I'm kind of in Salem talking all the time, it's hard to envision what a second location would have been. And so I was working with someone in Denver to possibly do a location, and Baltimore kind of it was dragging a little bit, and Baltimore appeared in front of me. And if there's ever going to be a location about Ouija boards, I mean, Baltimore has more of a claim than Salem. Parker Brothers made it in Salem, but Fold and his family made it there for 70 years. And that's really where it started, where it was named. And the TBHS had really done a lot of work in Baltimore, acknowledging like where it was named, which is now a 7-Eleven. There's a plaque hanging up in the 7-Eleven. Elijah Bond's headstone. The factory that Fold fell from is now the state of Maryland's first public landmark. So just those 3 things alone are things that we worked with in Baltimore and Maryland, the state, about. So when this came about, it was a perfect fit because there's a store. My favorite neighborhood in Baltimore is Hamden, and that's where John Waters' Atomic Bookstore, where he gets his mails at one end, and there's an oddity shop called Bazaar, and they've been in business for 10 years. They actually came to OuijaCon when we held a convention in Baltimore, when we unveiled the plaque for the 7-Eleven, for where it was named. They had been there, the owners, and so they've just been friendly and supportive over the years. And so when that space became available above their store, working with them seemed like a no-brainer. And so that's really how that space came about. And what I do in that location to make it different than Salem is I try to really focus on that local history. Baltimore is known for having some pretty weird things, Edgar Allan Poe, John Waters. And so I try to make that history very specific to Baltimore. I met so many people that would come to Salem and they'd hear the history about Baltimore. They'd be like, how do I not know this? How did I come over to Salem to learn something about where I'm from? And so that was really the main motivator to be like, well, let's bring the history to you.
Is there a John Waters Ouija board connection?
There is. I mean, in the sense that for Elijah Bond, whose headstone, like I said, it's the Ouija board, it was about a 10-year search to find out where he was buried. Murch had called the largest cemetery in Baltimore, Greenmount, back in 1996. And on the phone, they said, no, he's not buried here, but his son and wife are. And so Murch basically called every, cemetery in Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, trying to find out where he's buried. He went and visited Greenmount in person, and he had to get special permission to go to the records room. He flipped through the index cards. They were all handwritten, and he found the wife's card, the son's card, and Elijah's card was actually stuck to the back of their card. He was in the first place that they looked 10 years earlier. The cemetery is like, well, we know roughly where he's buried, but his son died in a car accident, a few months afterwards, and so no one ever put a headstone in for him. So they got the groundskeepers with sounding rods to go to the patch of earth where they thought he was buried, and they started putting the sounding rods in the ground. As this was going on, John Waters happened to be visiting the cemetery. Right, very close by is the grave of Johnny Eck. Johnny Eck was a famous sideshow performer. He's in the movie Freaks.
Mhm.
He has no lower body. He walks on his hands.
Okay.
And Johnny Eck is buried there. So John Waters just happened to be in the cemetery visiting Johnny Eck. Came over to witness the third rod go in the ground, where they then hit it, and it shook. And that's how we found out where Elijah was buried. So John Waters probably doesn't know that is what became the Ouija headstone, so to speak, but he was there when it was discovered with the sounding rods.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I didn't expect John Waters to be in this.
You talk to anyone in Baltimore, everyone has a John Waters story.
Oh yeah,
he shows up just about everywhere. So I'm not so surprised that he's not there. I hope he makes it to the Ouija Museum, to the Witch Board Museum there sometime. Bazaar downstairs has this great taxidermy raccoon, and it's like dressed up like Divine in the pink dress with the gun, to eat shit.
Yeah.
Pink flamingos. They have a taxidermy raccoon dressed up like Divine in their store.
Oh,
I think it's too classic. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. I love that so much. I'm like, now I have to go to Baltimore, apparently. And
Baltimore's a great city, and the Hampton neighborhood really is one of my favorites. It's got all the cool cafes, and you can walk around, and cool stores, record stores, antique stores in there.
Okay. No, I'm definitely putting that on the list. One of the things I was very curious about with your museum is, do you use any of the boards? Do you take donation boards? I think one of the big ones from the group was, are any of them haunted?
Yeah, most of it's.
Whoop.
Yes.
What is? Hello? Can you hear me by chance? Oh, there we go.
I can.
Okay, good. There we go. Okay, I don't know what happened there. That was weird.
All right. That's right. You had froze for a little bit, but I could hear you. The picture froze.
Oh, okay.
I can hear you.
Just as long as you can hear me. That's the important part.
Oh, yeah, no worries. So most of the boards in the museum are my obsession to collect them. There are a few boards that have been donated over the years to the TBHS and now to the museum directly because the previous owners had a bad experience with them. And so some of those boards, I don't tell people, I try not to influence them in any way, but some people come to the museum and they're drawn to some of those boards. And they'll tell me they feel something. People will get nauseous, people will pass out, people will feel like tingling in their head, pressure in their sinuses. It's not uncommon for any of those things to happen around some of those boards. And pretty much every day, something weird happens to somebody.
Oh, wow. I would desperately ask you which ones, but I feel like that kind of ruins the surprise for everybody else.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can just say that, the reactions are real. Just last week, a couple things happened where a guy, a husband and wife came in. He left within a few minutes. When he came back, I said, "You okay?" He's like, "Oh, I got sick," which wasn't uncommon. A little while later, when I was talking about the donated boards, the wife scoffed. She's like, "I don't feel anything." And a couple of minutes later, her face changed. She was like, "Oh, I'm starting to feel pressure in my chest." And then a little while later, her face totally got blank, and she's like, "I feel sick too." And so she didn't get sick. They left a little while later, but the next day, the husband came in by himself, totally straight-faced. John, I don't know how to tell you this, so it sounds so strange coming from me. I'm a skeptic. I don't believe in any of these things at all. I went outside. I got sick. But when my wife and I left, she went outside. She projectile vomited. Her wrists and her ankles locked up. She couldn't move. She leaned against your building for 40 minutes.
Oh, my God.
And that was just last week alone. But other things happen with photography, weird things, photos coming out black and blurry, and people coming back later saying, "Hey, I checked all my photos, they're fine. Now they're messed up." Lots and lot weird technology stuff happens all the time. CNN had filmed a year ago, their batteries drained. They couldn't explain what happened. They made sure everything worked properly. Back on September, Friday the 13th, CNN Australia came in.
Oh,
None of their stuff was working properly. They had filmed in Boston the day before, and they had asked me like what weird stuff happens. I told them Rolex watch stopped on the side of the museum, on the side of the room, and all these different things. And then it happened to them, and they were like, "What did you do?" Like, I didn't do anything. You asked me, and I gave you a laundry list of like 50 things that people have reported to me over the years, and then they happened to them, and they were surprised.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that you can't buy that publicity.
No, no, no. And I mean, I believe these people have those reactions. I totally believe that they believe they're doing it. They're not acting,
Mhm.
you know? Yeah. And I don't know what happens in Baltimore. I've had the owner, the people from Bazaar have told me that one of the first visitors had walked up to the top of the stairs and then pretty much turned around, ran out, and left. They don't know what happened.
Oh,
That person
wow.
didn't go and talk to them, but they know for a fact that the person went into the room, ran out. And since then, I've gotten reports that other things like that have happened where people will come down and at least say that they felt something, they heard something in the room. That kind of stuff has been being reported in Baltimore now.
That is awesome. I mean, terrifying, but awesome.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it.
That's. Do you ever do like nighttime paranormal tours, like investigations of the museums, either Baltimore or Salem?
So I don't host any tours, but I've rented out to plenty of paranormal groups who've
Oh.
come in. And the first one I did it for roughly 3 years ago in Salem. They played back the EVP messages, all these stuff, all these recordings that I got, and they would hear things like, get out, get out. And so I've heard a lot of that footage. A lot of them, sometimes when they use all the REM pods, all these different things,
Mhm.
it takes a couple hours or days to kind of sort through all the data to go through things. But usually they give me a wrap up on it, and I always hear something from somebody. It's never like, oh, nothing happened at all. It's like, nope, we got this or we got that. So, but I rent it out for people to do investigations. And if anyone's interested, they can just message me directly through, Instagram or Facebook or something through the museum. But yeah, that happens pretty often.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's really good to know for my own sake, because I desperately would like to talk to you about that the next time
Yeah.
I'm out there. What do you think is the spookiest thing that's ever happened in the museum?
Spookiest? I don't know. I nothing spooky. I have people that come into the museum to use the Ouija board that I have out on display.
Mhm.
And some of the funnier stories have been recently where two girls came in by themselves. No one else was in the museum at the time. They were being really loud, joking around, taking pictures, and they pulled the Ouija out and they asked, is there anyone here who'd like to speak to us? And the board spelled back quiet. And they're like, oh, shit. They got kind of spooked and they put it away and they left. 2 days later, two other girls, very similar situation, came in kind of being loud and they pulled it out and the board spelled back stop. And they're like, oh shit. So they packed it up and stopped using it. So I thought I don't think it's bad. I think it's an honest conversation. Now, if you're calling a ghost in the middle of the night or something, not everyone wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
And if they're going to be honest with you and say, no, don't want to talk to you now, leave, stop. So I don't think it was a negative, but they were just funny because their reactions, they were freaked out by it.
No, I think that's freaking hilarious, personally. Like, ghosts have boundaries too sometimes. I do you think they get more active around like October? And do you think it's October or do you think it's the amount of tourists coming in?
It's I think it probably has more the amount of people. I see more people in October than I do almost the entire year combined. Almost, you know what I mean? It's that much of an influx in people, tourists in Salem. The very first Saturday in October, there's 125,000 people walking around the street. And if you look on a map on how big Salem is, really, honestly, from where I am, that part of Essex to the Bewitched statue, that's where I'm talking majority of those people are on that small part. If I had to guess, I would say that's like a quarter of a mile. maybe, you know what I mean?
Jeez.
It's not a big distance. And so that's where I think a lot of people come in, a lot of people sensitive to it,
Mhm.
being there, being open to it. And so I'm getting more reports typically in October. It happens year round, don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. People do tell me stories all year round. But in October, I'm seeing so many people. The amount of stories I hear in 1 month is quite a bit.
Do you have any like visitor favorite stories that have come in?
I think for me, honestly, one of the best visitors I ever met was a woman in New Zealand, from New Zealand, and she uses the Ouija. And most of the stories I hear are kind of what you expect. You know, slumber party used it.
Mhm.
It told me this, and it was right, and I never want to touch the Ouija board again, or some kind of more spookier story. But her story was that she had lost her son a few years ago,
Mm.
and she uses the Ouija board, and it brings her a lot of comfort, and she's very thankful for that. And it was a nice reminder to me as to why the board exists,
Mhm.
why it came about. And I don't hear those kind of stories very often. She was, her friends were very nervous about her, like, well, how do you know you're even speaking to your son? And she asked me like how I would answer them. And I was like, well, is it a bad conversation? No, not at all. I love it. I am so happy to be able to talk. I was like, well, then what's it really matter? If it's a
Mm.
bad conversation, you can figure out what you want to do. But if it's helping you in any way, I think people get very caught up on, where these messages come from.
Mhm.
Is it really a ghost? Is it your subconscious? Is it a mystery? Is it the person that says it is that they say they are? Well, to me, you know, the message is always more important than where it comes from. And typically these boards were sold, during a time of war
Yeah.
where everyone had lost someone. And so that's how I answered. So to me, her conversation I thought was a nice reminder. And it's one I don't get to hear as often.
Mhm. I was gonna say it sounds like the old school like Civil War, and especially World War One, with spiritualism kicking off again. That's what that reminded me of. So I'm like,
Sure.
those are the sweet ones. We love that. Have you come into? Have you ever been around like a quote unquote evil possessed board, other than perhaps your grandmother's?
I haven't, and to be honest with you, I don't look at the Ouija board that way.
Hmm.
To me, it's a tool to have a conversation, and with the same intent you would put towards a car or a gun
Hmm.
is the intent you put towards a Ouija board. You want to do something stupid's going to happen. So I don't really think of it as like an evil thing. The only thing close I can say I can answer to this is if someone asks me, "Are you afraid of any board or is any board that you're nervous around, something like that?" There's not, but there's one board in the museum I was hesitant to put in the museum. The positives are that it's from Scandinavia, and so it has like a different alphabet on it. It's really large. It's about 2 feet by 3 feet large, and the person created it to try to specifically speak to Satan. And I like it when people make a board, whether it's to speak to angels, try to speak to their past lives. The negative, the horrible negative, is the guy who made it was a total piece of shit white supremacist. And, he believed some pretty horrible shit.
Mm.
I try not to focus and I have to tell the story. It's history. I got to tell you about the guy if you ask, but I don't like it for that reason. But I like that I can show you an international board, which is pretty rare to find boards made in other countries, and certainly a board that was specifically made to speak to Satan, and especially that large. So I think the positives outweigh the negative when I'm
Hmm.
talking about the history of these boards. Again, I'm a museum, and a museum's job should not be to cater to, maybe things that aren't unpleasant. You know what I mean? You got to tell the whole history, and that's the safe place for a museum is that you should be able to tell maybe some bad stories that people don't want to hear or be reminded of, but unfortunately, it's history. And,
Hmm.
I kind of feel as though for the museum, I can't just have everything that I want to talk about. I have to have things in the museum that other people might want to talk about or be interested in, or maybe not have access to learning about.
The full history.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the Ouija has bad shit. The Ouija has good stuff. It has everything. And I try to really give a balanced view of the Ouija so it's not everyone liking it and leaving it and wanting to go buy one. I want people to also be like, yeah, is it something to fear? Sure, here's a bunch of reasons why you might want to fear it. So I try to give a nice balanced view of the Ouija.
It's not the board with the swastika on it, is it?
No,
Oh, okay.
no. There's two boards in the museum that have swastikas on them. Both of them are both pre-World War II.
Mhm.
The one in the first case with the large swastika is from 1907, and that's 25 years before Hitler had stolen the symbol.
Okay.
Both the boards are, the swastika had been used by Nordic and Hindu.
Mhm.
The two boards in the museum, though, however, it's indigenous. So the Navajo tribe in the Southwest, they use the swastika. It translated means good fortune, good luck. And both boards are both pre-World War II from Navajo.
Okay.
use.
That's so cool. Looking at the list real quick. One of the things that a couple people asked was like tips for unhaunting a board, which I think they made up that word. But is that even something you do? Is that like, do you cleanse boards if they come in?
Well, for me, I don't. I mean, I think of the Ouija board like a cell phone. And if you had a bad conversation on my cell phone, I wouldn't sage or cleanse it. That's me. But of course, if you're the one that has better peace of mind, be like, well, John, that makes sense, but can't hurt, then do it. It's your peace of mind and it's your gut instinct. I can tell you that if you have a board that you feel as though giving you problems and you want to get rid of it, my experience tells me give it to me or anyone who is willing to take it. I have 30 boards in the collection that have been donated over the years, and 28 of the 30 times the problems went away when the boards went away. 29, there's a board that was sent without a return address. So I can't tell you. I have no idea who to contact because they were so worried about the board finding its way back to them, they didn't put a return address on the package. There's one board in the museum that was donated where the problems went on for a little while longer, and eventually the son was committed to a mental institution, and then the problems went away. So my experience is, doesn't have to be me, but anyone willing to take it. The problem is when you go online or you talk to other people, you hear a lot of different things, conflicting things. Break it into 7 pieces, buried it in a graveyard, in a church graveyard, sprinkle it with holy water, all the, in my experience, donate it to anyone willing to take it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I like that. What would you say would be the most negative experience you have heard? Either something that you have come across or maybe visitors? Because I know when we were talking about the white supremacist guy a little bit, you said there were little things, and I wanted to go back to that a little bit because I was curious.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the most negative thing, not negative, but the most disturbing thing that I've heard someone tell me, people come to the museum to find me and tell me their stories. And, they tell me stories, people don't believe them, people laughed at them, they want validation. But one of the real most disturbing stories I heard was really recently. This woman came in to tell me about when she was a kid, she had used the Ouija board. I think she said she was about 7 or 8 years old. She was using it with her cousins. And the board spelled out a word, they didn't know what it was. So they wrote it down, as it spelled it out, and they had to ask their parents like what that word was. It was asphyxiation. And I just thought, oh my jeez, what a horrible fucking thing for a 7-year-old kid to have to learn a word through the Ouija board, that word. Like, I don't know, I just think it was such a bad thing to have to learn. And they were so young, they're like, we don't know how to spell. We don't know what that word was. We don't know how to spell. So it wasn't like, someone's subconscious spelling something. These are little girls. And I thought that was one of the more disturbing stories I've heard about the Ouija board.
Asphyxiation? Wow. I'm like, strangle for a 7-year-old? Spelling wise? Yeah. Asphyxiation. Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Do you ever use any of the boards in the shop, or are they more museum pieces kind of thing?
Yeah, no, to be honest with you, I don't really even use the Ouija board. I mean, I have when I was younger, more like most people at a slumber party, goofing around with it and stuff. I can't say anything really memorable happened using it. I don't use it not because I'm nervous or afraid. I mean, I love these boards. I'm obsessed with them. But my grandmother had such a strong connection to the board, and the board just doesn't work for me like it did for her. And when I talk about, how you influence the board in some way, everyone has different beliefs, superstitions, and makes it work differently for them than somebody else. I'm just very nervous that the board will not work for me at all, that I'll influence into not working at all for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't use it. But, the museum is a small part of the collection. There's, the Baltimore place, plus there's 600 boards here in the room with me now. And so I rotate things through. I like to tell different stories. To me, it's all about storytelling. And I try different things sometimes. I things I'm like, oh, let's see if people ask me about this or if this comes up in conversation. And if it doesn't, then I go on to something else, But I think the Ouija board touches so many different things, such as pop culture, that I like to have different things in the museum to really kind of talk about for everybody.
I guess I didn't realize that you rotated them out. That means like it's an excuse to go back again.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, people come to Salem, maybe not every year, but every couple of years. And I think they want to come back, to check on me, make sure I'm still as enthusiastic as I was when they met me the first time, but also what new stories I have, what new items, what, I might get it right after we off this podcast. Someone might write to me and say, John, I have this item and I'm going to hop in my car and I'm going to go pick it up. And then guess what? If it's cool to talk about other than being rare, then it'll be in the museum. So, I mean, I things get put in that way. And then here, the boards here, some things have to stay there. I have to tell the story in a certain way, and certain boards help me tell that story. But a lot of it is kind of like meant to be, this is not here permanently. This is something that I'm showing you today, and then you might not, if you don't catch it, within like the 5 to 6 month window, then you might not see it again for 3 or 4 years.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite story connected to a board that's not up at the moment?
I do, actually. It's here in my basement, and it's a really special board to me. It really, really is an example of my friendship with my friend Murch. Murch was one of the first collectors I met. He became a best friend, a mentor to me, and he really is an amazing person. And before I met him, bidding on eBay and stuff, it was very competitive. People would out, snipe. And the next day, if something sold in the middle of the night, people would write to sellers and be like, hey, I know you sold that, but you haven't shipped it yet. I'll give you more money for it. And redo deals and stuff.
Ooh.
And so I had bid on a board, and my bid got canceled. And they ended up doing a buy it now for somebody. So I didn't end up winning it.
Mm.
When I became friends with Murch, I mentioned it to him in passing, like, oh, I really wanted that board, and they canceled my bid. Turned out it was from him. He admitted, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. In the past, it was kind of a faceless crime, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't know who you're doing it to. But then he met me and we were friends. He was like, he felt horrible about it. Well, a while later, he was working on a really big exhibit down at the Baltimore Museum of Industry. It was really one of the first times that Ouija had been a huge exhibit on display. And I've been a musician for over 35 years, and there's a bunch of sheet music from the 1920s about Ouija boards that was never recorded. So only put on sheet music. They didn't record the songs back then. And so in passing, he was like, oh, one of these days, I'd really love to have these songs recorded. So kind of last minute, I was able to get someone to read the sheet music, play piano, get my friend to sing, get a studio I was friends with out in 3 hours west of here to record it. And I did it within 3 days. I got the MP3s, could send them to Murch. So I drove down to Baltimore to see this exhibit. It was a big deal that the Ouija was being on display. And Murch was doing his presentation, his lecture. And out of nowhere, he fucking put up a picture of me. And he said, this guy right here just got these songs recorded. The first time anyone's ever going to hear these in probably close to 100 years, the sheet music that was never recorded. And he played little snippets of the songs.
Oh.
At the end of the exhibit, he walked over and handed me that board that he had bought a while back. And so that's, that cemented our friendship. You know what I mean? He just did something really selfless, and that's kind of how our friendship is. We both do things for each other. I don't think we don't keep track. We just, whatever. If he wants something, if he came to me and wanted something in my collection, I'd give it to him. If I wanted something in his collection, he'd probably be like, take it. It means more to you. Like, that's fine. So we kind of have this a really amazing friendship. And I think that board is a nice example of how it started, where it really kicked up much higher than just being friends about Ouija boards. We became like friends about in life, you know?
That is so cool. Like,
Yeah.
what a
Merch is a part of a lot of my adventures. When I got that collection down in Florida,
Mhm.
you know, it was with him, and we had such a great time driving down there together, trying to stay awake for all that time. And you know, sadly, he lives in Denver now, so you know, we don't see as much as often as we used to. When he lived here in Boston, we would go to breakfast pretty regularly, and you know, we were always meant to do a museum together. We always said we would, and we'd come and look for spaces together. And he moved away. I was able to actually find the space and make it happen. But he curates, and like I said, he's an amazing mentor and friend to me. So his collection is not just a little bit bigger than mine. It's like, I don't even know, quadruple my collection.
Really?
It's ridiculous. Yeah, he's been doing it for a very long time. He's very passionate. He's been obsessed with it much longer than me. And so he has really been the guy that consults on movies. He consults, you know, on TV shows and all these different things. He's the Ouija guy. And so to have him as a curator and a friend who's willing to pretty much take anything out and put it on display in the museum and all the history. I mean, all the history that we know today on, you know, uncovering Helen's story, that really comes from his hard work. He's the guy that went down the rabbit hole for 6 years trying to uncover her story. And so I'm a friend on the side who's a cheerleader for him, but really the history, I am telling you stories that he's the guy that pretty much uncovered them.
Oh, I just love this group you guys have. It's so
we really have
cool.
curated a nice group of people. We're all friends. Calvin was the first collector I ever met, and I met him through Craigslist. Not in the you know, missed connections, but I had placed ads for looking for Ouija boards, and he was the first guy to respond back, who was another collector who didn't just have a board for sale, and he's in Connecticut. And so then after that, I met Merch, then met Rick and Karen, who's the treasurer. I'm sorry, Karen is the secretary. I'm the treasurer. But yeah, and I just love that we all have this passion for the board. We all have kind of different backgrounds as to how we came into interested in the Ouija board, but we all care about the history and we all care about preserving it. And so I think, you know, you meet a lot of people who have opinions and like want to do things their way and stuff, but we're a group of people and we find a way to get things done, even though we have very different backgrounds to that.
Do you have your music anywhere, like to hear the recordings?
Oh, for those songs, yeah, they're on the Talking Board Historical Society. We have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
And so the songs are called Ouija Mine, and the other one's called Ouija Ouija Tell Me Do. And those two songs are up on there, the full songs. My friend Myra, she did the vocals. A guy I worked with at my old job, he did the piano for it. And yeah, pretty cool to hear. I love songs about the Ouija board.
Oh, because I found a few here and there for different podcasts, but it's usually like they're okay. Like I have one about table tapping, which is fun, but
Nice.
like a good Ouija one that makes me happy. What advice would you have for anyone who would like to start collecting? Because I know I desperately want to start.
Sure. I think the first thing, you know, eBay is the most accessible to most people. I mean, that's for like antique and vintage stuff. You don't have to start there. I mean, in the last 6 months, all those new boards that came out, The Exorcist, Child's Play 2, there's a lot of boards that are out there that are very accessible to get that in time will probably be collectible. You know, they're not going to be produced forever. And so, you know, you could start there, not put a lot of money into it. If you start getting into it further and further and you want to start going older and older, eBay is a good resource, but I would really strongly suggest that you be careful just throwing a bunch of money. I would kind of watch for a while, start to see what prices are, because it's very easy for prices to start spiking at certain times when new collectors come in. You want it right away, you're going to pay whatever. And things that might normally sell for $100, next thing you know, one of them could sell for $300. It doesn't mean that's the real price of it. It just means that you had two people that really wanted it at the same time. But if you had watched, 2 months earlier or 2 months later, you might find it back for that $100. So, and I think if you go for something super rare, you probably should talk to another collector, because unfortunately, there have been some fakes out there. People have been taken for a lot of money buying fake boards. And so talking to a collector who might help authenticate it and, teach you something, that would be for something. If you're going to start spending a lot of money, I don't suggest paying more than $200 for a board without talking to somebody else.
Okay.
At this point, we've seen too many fakes out there. Certain boards haven't been fake, but stencil boards, wooden boards, that has been. It's too easy. It's too tempting for people to do.
There's a lot on eBay.
So, I'd probably just start. There's plenty of stuff available now that you can find, and then the antique stuff. Go to your antique stores, go to thrift stores, go to flea markets, yard sales, estate sales, do all that stuff. You don't have to pay a lot of money to get a good collection. You just don't. If you're smart about it, to me, collecting isn't about just having an instant collection. I don't know. I like the adventure. I like looking. I like talking to the people and the people I meet on the way. And I guess I learned early on that I wouldn't own every Ouija board. I will try to own every Ouija board, but I know I'm not going to. And so there's plenty of times where things get out of my price range. And I'm like, it's not worth it for me. Unless I've hunted it for like 10 years and it's been on my obsessed list for a long time, then it's like, no, I'll find another one. I'd rather own it at a good price than overpay for it and be kind of mad with myself for doing that. So I'm not every collector, but that's the kind of way I collect is, I sit at the sidelines until it's something I really want. Then hell yeah, I'll get it.
Okay. Yeah, there's some I've seen on eBay that are like $12,000 and they're supposed to be like originals. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be a collector.
Yeah, I think a lot of collectors I meet, they come to the museum, for instance, and I have that back wall where there's probably 40 or 50 different manufacturers during World War II that had made them. And when you see them together, it's an amazing visual,
Yeah.
And I think that inspires a lot of people. And so some collectors, they start going in it, they get about 10, 15 boards in, they've put a lot of money into it, and they realize like, oh, A, I don't have anything super rare. I don't have something that another collector doesn't have. And B, I haven't even touched the tip of this, and I'm going to spend a whole lot more money. And so I think a lot of people chap out. They come in strong, they overpaid because they didn't pay attention. And then I see a lot of collectors that leave within just a couple of years. Pretty common thing. The longer I collect, the more collectors I've seen come and go. And I love it that people come in, they're passionate and want to learn stuff. But I'm always skeptical that they're not going to be around very long, because time has proven that there's not a lot of collectors who have been doing this for more than 10 years, for instance.
Wow. I never thought about that with like the collecting community, that people just come in and out for a product that's been around for like a century.
Yep. And, I always tell people too, the best advice is don't buy anything, anything you want to collect. Do not buy it because you think it's going to be worth money down the road. Buy it because you like it and you're going to enjoy it. And if someone gives you any money for it when you're done and pass it on, be lucky that happened. But, to buy something as an investment, I never think that's collecting. That's not collecting. That's, investing. And I just don't, I don't look at my collection that way. I look at it as like, hey, that was a fun thing. I got that. I went with merch and we picked this up, or I traded with my friend to get this one, or they were around, and, things like that. Those are the stories. I think, merch and myself and some of the other collectors, we collect the stories of what it was like to get the item, but the item is not really as important as the story.
I love that. That makes me really happy. Real quick, one of the things that I was really surprised by in the museum, because like everything has these really wonderful positive stories, except for the ones about, the boards with like Hitler, although the one with Hitler shooting himself as a prediction is still eerie. That was the one that really took my brother aback. He was like, But there were murders, and I could not remember for the life of me any of the names or the circumstances, like true crime stories around Ouija boards. So, if you would be willing,
Sure. I mean, I mean, there's quite a few. I mean, the first suicide starts in 1900. There's murders by 1933, and even stuff today. I mean, I went to the UK a couple years ago. I talked about stuff like from 1995, jury consulting the Ouija board to come up with a verdict for the murder trial. 2004, where a kid used it, thought he was speaking to Satan, asked, well, what would you have me do? The board spelled back kill. And 2015, a guy killing his dog because the Ouija board told him that his dog was possessed by the devil. And then his wife and daughter trying to contact the dog through the Ouija board. A few days later, it told them they would soon die, so they took sleeping pills to overdose. They lit their house on fire to kill themselves. So, there's stories that happened as early as 1900 with suicide, and they go on right to today. As a matter of fact, what am I saying? November 20th, a boy in Colombia was killed by his two best friends after they used the Ouija board, told him to kill him. So that's the most recent one I can think of, was about a year ago in Colombia.
Whoa. Okay. Wow.
Well, we're in October right now, so a lot of times you Google that stuff. A lot of websites have done some of the Ouija crimes.
Okay.
And, there's some good ones out there. I try to mix mine up a little bit. I try not to always rely on the same ones, but the ones I talk about the most at the museum are my favorite ones. So it's kind of fun too. But there's some pretty crazy stuff that has happened that people blame the Ouija board for.
Wow. What do you think is your favorite story with the crazy stories like that? Because it's always one of those funny things to me. Like I'm with you, the same mindset. I literally describe using a Ouija board like using a gun, that if you do something stupid, you're gonna get hurt, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But these stories are like, why? What? They're so fascinating to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, I'll be honest with you. When I tell any of the stories, I'm like, my first thought isn't to blame the Ouija board for any of them. I'm okay that it does get blamed. Don't get me wrong. I love that the Ouija board has a dark side, that it gets blamed for a lot of stuff. I'm just personally not blaming it for any of those stories, Yeah. I think the one I'm telling lately about, like I said, there was a jury in the UK that consulted the Ouija board to come up with a verdict for a murder trial. But they found them, they used it, they didn't get in trouble for using the Ouija. They got in trouble for discussing the case at the hotel when they were sequestered. So we always speculated that if they used it in the jury room, they wouldn't get in trouble. And that's from 1995. That's in the UK. But what's funny is I've told that story for a few years now, and I've always kind of said to people, if I ever got called for jury duty, and then 3 weeks ago, I was called. I got called for federal jury duty in downtown Boston.
Oh, wow.
And I showed up with my 1910 wooden Ouija board. I put it through the metal detector, and the people there were like, what the hell is this? And I was like, hey, it said no electronics. I'm okay. I went in and sat in the jury pool, about 112 people. I put the Ouija board on my lap, and literally most of the people around me got up and relocated. They would not sit near me. I was finally able to see the judge. And of course, he was like, did you think you were going to use that to deliberate or consult for the case? I was like, yeah, I have the world's only Ouija board museum. I am 100% going to use it. And he ended up excusing me from the jury. But I really did try, and it was a fun day. Bora, who's the famous witch of Salem, happened to be at the courthouse the same exact time. So Bora can back up my story 100% with the people moving away from me and whatnot. Bora, yeah. So a true story that happened recently, me trying to use the Ouija board for jury duty.
That is fucking epic.
Yeah, it was great. It was pretty great. I think a lot of people are like, no way. And I'm like, there was, a federal court, you can't bring phones.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really record it. I left it in the car. But I showed up and the X-ray, going through the X-ray machine a couple times. So I left and cut the metal detector or whatever, and they were pretty funny. But I walked around everywhere with it, and no one wanted to sit near me. Bora did. Bora sat next to me, but everyone else, wasn't interested in being around the Ouija board.
Oh, I'm so gonna try that the next time I get jury duty.
Yeah, I'll do it every time from now on. I didn't, and don't get me wrong, I would serve. I mean, I'm not looking to get out of. To be honest with you, I did not want to serve in September because the federal was going to be 3 weeks, and I run a business in Salem, and I asked for a hardship to be like, hey, I'm self-employed. I can we please just push it back to December, January? I've been on 3 week juries before. It's not a problem at all. Not happy to do it, but I'm okay. It's my responsibility. I'll do it. So if it comes up again, I'll still bring the Ouija board there too, because I will use it if I'm picked.
I mean, the thing is, there's a precedent for it now. It was used in the UK fairly recently.
Yeah, that got thrown out of court when they found out. But like I said, it got thrown out because they used it where they were sequestered. But the funny thing is, they did find him guilty. It wasn't all the jurors. It was 2 or 3 of the jurors. They used Ouija, found him guilty, and so when they retried the guy, they actually found him guilty again. So,
wow, I something as recent as 95. I'm like, I love that.
Oh yeah.
I guess it's not that recent anymore, but it's still recent. Dang it. And that's the thing. I'm like, that would have been so cool if they used it in the court. It's that sequestering thing.
Yeah, there was another case I just read about recently. I probably don't have all the facts straight on it, but I want to say that a woman used the Ouija board, and supposedly the Ouija board was saying a bunch of nasty rumors and stuff about her neighbor. And so the woman regurgitated those stories to other people. And then the neighbor was like, you can't be saying all this bad shit about me. So she tried to sue. And then when they took it to court, she was like, well, it wasn't me. It was the Ouija board that said all these things. And so it kind of got dismissed in that way. But it was kind of funny because, well, you said it. And she's like, but I heard it from the Ouija board. I was just telling you what the Ouija board told me. That was I want to say in the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken. I just heard it really recently, and I don't know. I just thought it was a pretty interesting thing that the Ouija did go on trial, but did supposedly that they because it was the Ouija board saying things and not her, she was okay. She didn't get in trouble for it, for slander or whatever.
I love that. Oh man. Oh, I just looked at the time and I know it is getting very late for you. I could literally talk to you all freaking night. Oh my God. God, what would you like anyone to take away from using Ouija boards, the history of them, any of it?
Well, I'm okay that people fear them, and not for everyone. So if you do fear it, then I don't know. I would think if you really want to use one, then you should look into using it. I think it can be a safe thing people use. But if you don't want to, or you want to fear it and consider it, something negative, that's okay too. I don't know. I don't look to persuade anyone what they think about the Ouija board. I think if you are just interested to know what's beyond what maybe a toy maker might have made, then come to the museum and hear some stories about how diverse its history really is. But yeah, personally, I'm okay with it being liked or hated. It's part of the history of it, and I don't need to persuade anyone. So I don't know. It's a good question, but I guess just just find out for yourself. Come to the museum in Baltimore or in Salem and come hear some cool stories about Ouija boards.
What are the hours, locations?
Yeah, so in Salem, the brick and mortar shop is at 127 Essex Street. That's the main street in Salem where everything happens. And we're open all year. I think we only close Christmas and Thanksgiving, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely Christmas. And I'm usually there 11 to 6 every day. In the wintertime, I might take a little bit of time off. But right now, through Christmas, I'm there 11 to 6. And then if you go to Baltimore, in the Hamden neighborhood on Chestnut, around the corner of 36th, that's an amazing shop too with the Baltimore history. And if you can't make it to Salem or Baltimore, just go to salemwitchboardmuseum.com or go to Instagram, Facebook. Of course, we have stuff there. And that's where I most actively post, is on Instagram. But yeah, check it out.
Wonderful. Yeah. my last question was, how can people find you? And you filled that in already. So I have to show you. I don't know if you were able to notice it.
I did notice it.
I have my little, on my spooky wall, I have
cool.
I have the pin too, because I went insane because I was so excited.
Nice. I love it. Thank you.
Oh, totally random. I know sometimes there are boards for sale in the museum.
Huh?
Obviously a good place to start collecting. Is that a fairly regular thing for people that might be there soon to go look again?
100%. I really pride myself on curating section vintage antique boards for sale. I do have new boards as well, but if you go to 100 flea markets, you might find one antique Ouija board. In Salem, I have a couple dozen for sale. I keep new stuff on the shelf that starts around $20. And then when you start getting the vintage antique, right around like $60, $70. And then I have I'm in a couple 1891 boards, and the first Ouijas. So I kind of try to keep all different price points, all different types of stuff. And I usually don't mail order. I try to keep it so that when people come to Salem, they're really getting the best experience possible, not just the history and getting questions answered and hearing the stories from me, but they have first chance at some really rare items that are cheaper than eBay.
For say the older one, the 1890 ones, for someone to save up the next time they come in, where do they usually run?
I have mine for $1,600.
Okay.
If you go online right now, you'll see some that are priced in over $2,000.
Oh, yeah.
So when I say I'm familiar with eBay and I try to price myself lower, people get mad at me because you don't ship, so it doesn't help me. I'm like, well, I have a board right now, a Veda board for $325, and some oddities guy has it for like $975. And they're like, well, you won't ship. I'm like, $600. Find one of your friends to come here and pick it up for you in person and buy it and then ship it to you. You know what I mean? Like,
I was gonna say that's cheaper than a plane ticket.
Exactly. Like it's even $600. So, but I won't go up on the prices based on that because I'm a collector, and raising my prices only hurts me in the long run when I want to go buy a board. And so all these kind of vultures who have kind of come into the Ouija world and don't really care about it other than to make money off of it. There's a lot of them out there. And
oh no, it paused again.
Anything?
Oh,
Back again.
There, now you're back. I can hear you again at least. Maybe.
I can hear you.
Oh.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the collecting. Oh. So yeah, unfortunately, the collecting market has people that are not.
What is happening, little internet? Oh, I think I lost you. Oh, you moved.
There you go.
Sorry.
There you go.
I was about to hang up and call you back, and all of a sudden, there you were. Yay! Your lips are synced up, so that's great.
Perfect.
Okay. Sorry, collectors. We were talking about vultures, and that's when you cut out.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there are plenty of people who are not connected to Ouija that just know they can make money off of it by buying and selling and marking up the prices to ridiculous amounts. That happens with kind of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's people that do that for video games. So why not do it for Ouija boards? But I think if you search around a little bit, you'll be able to find a good price. And I pride myself on, if I'm not the cheapest, I know I have it at a fair price for it.
And I think that's like, just as long as it's fair, it makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. To me, you're supporting a business, a brick and mortar, not some guy that's at his house who has no overhead, who's just, buying and selling online and reselling it. You're sometimes with the mom and pop shops, you want to support them. They pay a little bit more than you normally would. But with Ouija boards, not in my place. I definitely, try to keep things as low as I can. People are always like, John, you should be raising your prices. And I was a musician for 35 years. And I never once thought for a second about making money off of playing music. It was always about, we'll try to break even. And if I had merchandise on the table and someone came over and they'd be like, well, how much is it? I'd be like, how much do you want to spend? You know, I mean, I know the CD cost me $2, maybe $5. I don't care. Like, to me, I thought it was pretty cool that I was traveling around the world and people were buying my records all over the world. So I didn't care how much I made off of it. It just was more of like I got to meet cool people and do it. So, you know, I do that to a certain degree at the museum. You know, I sell things at what I think is a fair price and what I would want to pay for things. And I think, you know, it helps give a better story and people want to support that.
That's awesome. One more, real quick, I thought of. Do you think the just popularity of like witchy stuff and witchcraft in like with Hocus Pocus and even like Disney just did Agatha all along. I had to think what it was called, sorry. Do you think that's been, you know, helping the museum, helping tourism, making board prices go up just because of that connection?
Well, I think in Salem, you know, tourism has gone up the last couple of years. And I think it, you know, starts with Instagram and TikTok and people, you know, content creators coming in and doing that and influencing people to go there. I looked at the Halloween parade just happened last Thursday. And I was looking back to my memories of 7 years ago. And it's so funny because in the last 7 years, I mean, I would say the crowd at least doubled from what it was.
Wow.
7 years ago. So yeah, people are coming year round, people coming earlier. And I think a lot of it has to do with that part of it. Number two, you know, I'm in Massachusetts and it's a very liberal state. And I think, you know, Salem is certainly one of the most liberal cities in America. And so I think a lot of people who live in places that maybe aren't so liberal kind of want a vacation there as well, to be around people, like-minded people. And so not just witchy stuff, but of course the darker history to that. I think just Salem in general becomes a cool place to visit and be around other, you know, awesome people. But yeah, the influencers. And then I think, you know, all those shows. Yeah, there's plenty of witchy shows, plenty of horror movies, and Salem has evolved quite a bit. It's not just witch history. That's a big part of it. But the shops that are there, you know, there's horror shops, there's magic shops, there's, you know, the Ouija Museum, there's Museum of Torture, Count Orlok's Nightmare Gallery. There's stuff that doesn't really have to do specifically to the witch history, but kind of accompanies it pretty well, you know, good companion to it to keep the darker history going on. But yeah, I'm pretty thankful for it, you know, for whatever it is that's making it happen. Pretty cool.
I think that's really interesting because I almost heard the exact same thing, that it's like the safe place and it's more liberal and open-minded, from someone at the Charter Street Cemetery when we went there as well. Oh. So I'm like, I need to go back more often, I swear.
Yeah.
Yes. Again, thank you so much. I almost had a heart attack when I wasn't going to be able to say goodbye when everything paused for a second. Thank you so much. Again, I know it's late and I know it's your busy season. Thank you so much for carving out a little bit of time.
Of course. My pleasure.
I will definitely send you all the links for everything when it comes out. And you will definitely be hearing from me again, whether it's to set up an investigation or if it's, I found this at an oddity show. What do you think?
Cool. Oh.
I don't know what just happened.
You got pitch black. I hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. That was weird. Okay, there it goes. Oh, I disappeared though. Yeah, for some reason my phone just decided to connect for no reason whatsoever. It's been sitting here for almost an hour and a half. So weird. I'm so sorry about that. Stop it.
It's okay.
This is why I don't trust technology, I swear. That's why we play with Ouija boards. Perfect. Thank you. Like I said, you will be hearing from me again. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Great talking with you. And definitely keep in touch.
Will do. Thank you. Try to get some sleep. And I hope it's a really easy but prosperous season.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a good night, John.
Thanks, you too. Take care. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to everyone out there listening today. A big thank you for John Kozik for being on. Seriously, you guys, I think the admission was like $10. Go see the Salem Witch Board Museum. Talk to John. Oh my God. Seriously, it is worth it. Again, probably my favorite thing we did on that trip. So good. The rest of the podcast, not really today, let's be honest, is all written, researched, produced, edited, and hosted by me, Angela Hartshorn. Let's be honest, John did most of the work this time with the interview. There's the website, myhauntedlifepodcast.com. Please follow us on all the socials. If you really like what you hear and want to subscribe to the show, please do so. That'd be awesome. You can do it at our Patreon. And I think the smallest goal is like $2 a month. And honestly, all those little bits add up. They are amazing. Dream would be to do this full time, but obviously not right now. Maybe eventually. If you have any information about today's episode, or, you have a Ouija board story you would like to share, let me know. Email me at myhauntedlifepodcast@gmail.com. Or, like I said, the socials, the Facebook, the Instagram, the TikTok, the YouTube. And yeah, make sure when you're there to like, follow, and comment, subscribe, all those. I love it when people say hi. Just saying. I think I just stole that from Aaron Mankey. I just realized that. Oh well. And yeah. Oh, we have the Facebook group too. I always forget about the Facebook group. That's the most active. So definitely come. We post a lot of weird stuff in there. And we have a lot of fun. And I think that's about it. Remember, Ouija board crimes. Next time. Maybe Thanksgiving, maybe the week after. We'll see. I'm not sure. We'll see. You guys let me know what you guys want. Do you want it next week or the week before, after? So, yeah. Make sure to spread the word, tell your friends and family about us. All the little music is by Ghost Stories Incorporated. And until next time, friends, stay spooky.